listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the college football Heisman winner futures betting odds feature for Thursday, September 5th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
We're so excited that football's back up and running, and we're excited to talk about individual players too. One of the cool things with the industry, the way it's going, there are player props virtually on every game, and there are indexes for individual players that run the course of a season. It could be player to lead the NFL in receiving yards or rushing yards, and in college football, it's the odds to win the 2019 Heisman Trophy. And after the first full week of college football, we've got some developments. The one thing about this will not be a massively long segment because the field gets whittled down pretty quickly. Brian Blessing, glad to be with you in Las Vegas, and always thrilled to be joined by our expert of many topics, Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheep, and certainly college football fits the bill. And this was a topic we discussed months ago, and now we've actually seen guys play. Hello, Bruce. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, really good, Brian.
We are whittling down the index for odds to win the Heisman, which, somebody can still bloom onto the scene, but with each passing week, guys are virtually eliminated. We're down to, I think you would call it the big four right now. We could just start with, Tua in Alabama. He was 5-2. He sits on the board in that 3-1 range. Not much has changed there. There are two big developments: Jalen Hurts in Oklahoma, and then Trevor Lawrence in Clemson is being cannibalized by one of his own guys. And we'll talk about a strategy that I employed earlier in the year, and through week one, it's worked. But let's just talk about Tua with Alabama. He's going to, Bruce, rack up big numbers. The one concern you have with a guy like this, and I think the same premise exists with the quarterback Lawrence, is when they play in so many blowout games, there are going to be a lot of times when this guy just comes out of games early.
Yeah, and that could end up stat-wise hurting him a bit, although, he put up some big numbers last year, and the scenario is probably the same, but he can be outstatted by somebody, which was the case last year when Kyler Murray put up those big numbers. So I think, it's pretty safe to say unless Tua gets hurt, though, and he is the featured guy in an Alabama team that I don't think is going to lose until it gets into maybe the SEC title game. Would have a real chance there. But he's going to be the featured guy on a team that's going to be competing for the national title. So I would have a hard time seeing him dropping outside of the top 3 anytime during the year.
And before we go much further on him, just as an overview on the Heisman, I think, again, it's something that's voted on and judged. And we always talk about the East Coast bias. The other advantage that this guy has, he plays on a monster stage, and just frankly, a lot of the voters would thumb their nose at smaller schools, smaller conferences, and maybe other players. That's the one rub when you get somebody to go, well, this guy, he won this thing for fun, and then all of a sudden somebody else gets it, and then it's a stat-driven thing, which sometimes, what was more important? The guy came through in every tough game on the road, or the guy racked up 5 touchdown passes against a bad team?
Yeah, it's sort of, the Heisman races sometimes take on different characteristics each year, and how games sequence and how guys look in the big games. You're right. The bias thing, it's sort of a time zone bias, I think. Although that SEC thing, I would go back to what 4 years ago when, Christian McCaffrey had a year that should have won him the Heisman at Stanford in 2015, and yet Derrick Henry got the award. It was a close vote, but you put McCaffrey on Alabama that year and Henry on Stanford, and McCaffrey's going to win. So there's some validity in that. And this year, though, and most of the top candidates, well, they're not made from the Pac-12, I don't think, or west of the Mississippi, besides Hurts. But they still play in the Central Time Zone with Oklahoma. So I think in that this year, those are going to be the things we'll look at when we get to December and the votes.
All right, and one of the big developments is Jalen Hurts. Let's save him for last because no, let's do Jalen Hurts right now. Let's just fire away, do Jalen Hurts right now. And oh, by the way, how about the fact that Oklahoma in recent history, the quarterback at Oklahoma gets a real good look, and he's from 6-1 down to 4-1, and a really solid outing, looked good against Houston.
I think he's actually the favorite now because I think there would be, unless he gets hurt, he's going to put up big numbers in this Oklahoma offense the way Kyler did last year and Baker the year before that. Remember, at this time last year, Kyler's odds are not near as low as Jalen Hurts' odds are right now. So he's starting off with a head start. But there's going to be a sympathy vote for him a little bit if it came down to him and Tua. If it's a coin flip, I bet most of the voters are going to vote for Hurts. I mean, the guy performed extremely well there and then got pushed out of the job by Tua. No knock on Tua there. But there's a lot of people would like to see the last chapter of Hurts' college career be written with the Heisman. So he's going to have a real edge, I think, this year over anybody because there's going to be an emotional vote for him that would like to see him win because he had to transfer out. And it was, he was sort of pushed out of Alabama. It wasn't like he got up and left. And there were some things with Baker, with Texas Tech and early in his career at Oklahoma. And he even overcame that 2 years ago. But this year, there's going to be a lot of sympathy for Hurts. I'll guarantee you that.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Now, the big development, and to me, it's 1 week and it means absolutely nothing, but I think what I was thinking was on full display in week 1. And that's Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, who's gone from 3-1 up to 5-1. And the real big development is from 40-1 down to 8-1 is Travis Etienne. I will say this, Bruce, you talked me into the kid from Houston, Derek King, went and looked and watched video, just the thought process of what that offense is going to be all about. And at a big number, took a shot with his kid. He's out already. But the reason was he could lose a high-scoring close game to Oklahoma. Then they go on to have a great season. He'd still have a shot. He was fine. He was okay. But they weren't even close. So he's done. But my belief was Lawrence, as good as he is, and the same thing we said about Tua, Lawrence is not going to be needed to throw the ball all over God's creation because this team is so talented. And he has a real fine game, but it's real pedestrian from a stat deal. And from the Heisman, he's, I think, behind a rock and a hard place already with his running back, Etienne. I got him at 40-1. He's the biggest mover. He's down to at 8-1. But I'm probably not in real great shape either just because of what I'm saying about Lawrence. Etienne has 12 carries only. But he has 12 carries for 205 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 90 yards. So he's racking up the stats on a team that's got to probably play for a national championship. I'd make the case just because Lawrence has 170 yards passing or whatever it is in game 1, he's already behind his teammate.
Well, here's the fractiousness, though, of the Heisman voting. We're one game, a blowout over Georgia Tech in the opener, a rebuilt Georgia Tech team. And 1 week, all of a sudden, these Heisman odds change based on one game. And that's how flighty this stuff can be. In Lawrence, and Lawrence was a week 1 victim of that, but I don't think there's much staying power there. I expect him to put up some big numbers. If Clemson has a big year, Lawrence is going to be a star. Now, Etienne still posted huge numbers last year, and he could do it again. And if he comes in here with a year and he can continue to rack up numbers like he did last week, he's going to be in the race, whether his quarterback is one of the other top candidates or not. So he's going to be there. He's a legitimate candidate. But I'd be careful about, 1 week, especially a game like that was kind of a, just a blowout game. It unduly influenced the odds in the first week. There's still some guys to work at here. Taylor from Wisconsin could put up big numbers. If Ellinger from Texas beats LSU this week and has a big game, all of a sudden he's there. Joe Burrow could be the same way for LSU. It's still really early, but I think these numbers tend, and this could apply to Hurts too, because he had a big game in the opener against Houston. All of a sudden his numbers dropped, his price dropped. So right now that one game has a disproportionate influence on the odds, and that'll even up as we get deeper into the season.
The one other guy that's come down a touch is Ellinger, the quarterback at Texas, Bruce. Patterson at Michigan from 100 to 1 to 40 to 1. And Jacob Eason transfers in. You get him at Washington, 100 to 1 down to 60 to 1. So and DeAndre Swift with Georgia, 50 to 1 down to 31. So some new guys get a little attention and get a little money after a week.
Yeah, and that's it. The 1 week has a disproportionate influence on these odds right now, but that's all we've had to go by. If this stuff changes every week, 1 week through September could have a disproportionate influence the most recent week on the prices. But then when we get about mid-October, you start looking at body of work and things like that. Having said that, though, Ellinger's the interesting guy. He has a chance to be a real mover this week. He, by the way, put up a very good stat game against La Tech in the opener. Now Texas is on the big stage. If he looks good, Texas wins. Ellinger thrusts himself into the race, and Texas has some other big games, including a showdown with Hurts once, maybe twice this year against Hurts. So Ellinger could certainly fight his way back into the top tier for sure.
All right, Bruce, what I would say, and I kind of agree with you, that Hurts becomes the favorite, even though numbers-wise he's not, but he's second choice now, down to 4 to 1. And I think more than anything, it would be a function of it's the brand of ball they play, where he's going to throw the ball a lot because that's their offense. There'll be games where Bama doesn't need Tua. There'll be games where Clemson doesn't need Trevor Lawrence. Right now, I would agree with you. The pecking order, I think Hurts from Oklahoma, and I think Etienne has a real opportunity here because I think Clemson will always run the football. And if he's racking up those kind of numbers on 12 carries and all of a sudden, this kid's leading the league or the nation in rushing, maybe they start feeding him the rock a little more. But I'd say right now, after a week, I'd look at Hurts and think Etienne is the guy to keep an eye on.
Yep, I think that's about right. And remember, this Oklahoma thing has worked for the Heisman voters before. He's working on 2 in a row, Lincoln Riley. He's 2 for 2 as a head coach of Heisman winners and 2 for 2 transfer quarterbacks. And now this could be his 3rd in a row. So the Heisman voters are used to voting for Oklahoma quarterbacks. We'll put it at that.
Well, let me wrap it up with this final comment on this one. It's also because it's a voting thing and it's adjudged. Think of the story, Bruce, and what the script is. And that's Tua and Hurts are in New York. And the guy that lost his job wins the Heisman over the guy that took his job. You can see the headlines now.
Well, yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier. He's got the sentimental edge in this voting. And I tell you, if those two are kind of close to even, there's no way the voters are going to vote Tua over Hurts. They will vote for Hurts. Remember, too, he won a lot more fans last year coming off the bench to bail out Bama in the SEC title game. So that'll be in the minds of the voters, too. And things even, Hurts wins, but there's a long way to go before we get to that point.
Well, Bruce, it doesn't get you anything, but you always have my sentimental vote. Brian Blessing, Bruce Marshall. There's a look at the updated odds to win the Heisman.
Let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling, an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.